on that small crew race. Has he actually got that crew pace? Green light for the race.
23 races across 12 rounds of action-packed GT racing are ahead of us as the Wave Italy Apex Racing League GT Championship enters its 5th season with all rounds live right here on Apex Racing TV. Happy that you could all join us here this evening for the first round of the new season, and we'd like to give a huge thank you to Andy Taylor, Christian Steenberg and Colin Weatherholt, along with the rest of our production team, for helping to put on what is sure to be the best season of ARL GT yet. The drivers have their choice of all 5 GTE cars that the iRacing platform provides, and each round of the championship will be made up of 2 races, a 25-minute sprint race followed by a 40-minute feature, except for tonight. Round 1 is here at the historic Watkins Glen International Circuit, formerly a circuit regularly visited by Formula 1, with the United States Grand Prix being held here for 20 consecutive years throughout the 60s and 70s. It's now home to annual NASCAR and IMSA competition, and of course is hosting round number 1 here today in the Wave Italy Apex Racing League GT Championship. Tonight's opening round will be a single 80-minute endurance race in anticipation of the upcoming iRacing official 6 Hours of the Glen. Thanks again for joining us here on Apex Racing TV. I'm your host, Dane Baird, alongside Andy Thompson in the commentary booth with Simrudi Como, Mark Tranter and Lee Thompson behind the scenes in production. And Andy, a fantastic calendar here for this championship, starting here at Watkins Glen with some great circuits soon to come.
Yeah, brilliant track to start off a brand new season. Watkins Glen classic circuit. I don't find many people that don't like this circuit. I think it's got a mix of everything on it. It's got the fast corners, it's got tight loops, and some plenty of good places to overtake on this track. So a really good first round that I'm looking forward to, with a full field of GTE cars. So it should be action-packed, Dane.
Absolutely. 56 drivers taking to the grid for the first round here today, minus a couple of drivers that unfortunately can't make it for the first round. Hopefully they'll be back for the remaining 11 rounds. We head to Imola for the second round. Red Bull Ring, a brand new circuit to the iRacing server. It's only been here for, 5 days now. Then we head to Mosport, another historical track out there as we head into July. And then Silverstone, very popular circuit. Hockenheim, another one of the newer circuits to iRacing, been here for a season now, and one of the better circuits on the service in my opinion, and a lot of the drivers' opinions as well. Very popular circuit is Hockenheim, nice and wide. Should see some great racing there as we head into the second half of the season. Monza, Road America, Daytona, Zandvoort, Suzuka and Sebring. Some really great circuits here on the rest of the calendar.
Yeah, definitely. I think this race is a different mindset to the normal rounds in this season. So normally, like you said, it's a 20-minute followed by a 40-minute race. So the guys have had something differently to look at. They've got to look at obviously going around 80 minutes. So where they would normally not think about tyres or anything like that, that's going to have to come into play. Whether they eke out the 80 minutes on one set of tyres or look at changing tyres. So they've got a different mindset for this round compared to any other round in the rest of the season, Dane.
Absolutely. And you mentioned tyres. They're going to be extremely difficult to keep a hold on because the track temperature here is just under, in fact it's just ticked over as I say this, to 50 degrees Celsius, which is insanely hot. The drivers are going to have very little grip anyway, and after 80 minutes those tyres, if they don't change them at the pit stop that is mandatory for tonight's event, they're going to have a seriously tough time. I heard some of the drivers telling me they're going to have to start short shifting out of some of the corners in the boot section because it is going to be so difficult to put the power down without spinning the tyres up near the end of the race, because yeah, these tyres are going to be really worn by the end of it. It's a long one. The only endurance said round in the series. We've got 2 sprint and a feature for the rest of the ride. And yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting in the strategy terms of the series. Normally we don't get too much of that in the shorter races, but this should be interesting.
Yeah, for sure. That's going to play a big part, and I think that a lot of the guys, I was speaking to some of my teammates at racing tonight, and they were struggling on the 18-minute practice session they had. They said by the end of it, their tyres were completely shot, and therefore, you know, they really thinking about, do I need to change tyres or anything like that. So it's really going to come into play during the race. It depends where you are on the track as well, and what you've got going on around you to whether it influences to change your tyres or to keep the tyres that you currently got and eke it out. It's a conundrum for the drivers that they've never really had to worry about.
Absolutely, and yeah, as we get ready for the drivers to finish up in the qualifying session, let's take a look at the track then, Watkins Glen International, the boot layout in slightly more detail. We start off with the 90-degree right-hander at turn 1. Drivers want to maximize the speed out of this corner, so they'll be carrying the momentum all the way up through the S's of turns 2, 3, and 4, with the barriers lining the circuit's edge here, causing a bottleneck. That bomb pileups are quite common, something that we hopefully won't see in tonight's race. Now along the back straight into what's called the inner loop. It's a bus stop chicane, right, left, left, right. It's a decent overtaking opportunity here for the drivers if they can get a good run on the driver ahead out of turn 1. Expect to see them going too wide through there on lap 1. Carrying as much speed through there into turn 5. Straight back onto the brakes for the long right-hander, patient on the throttle as we enter the boot section of the circuit. That starts with turn 6. Hard on the brakes, down to second gear here. Expect to see a few daring drivers try to send it up the inside. Then down the top of the boot in towards turn 7, aka toe. You can see it's a bit shaped like a boot here, the extension of Watkins Glen, and turn 7 is the toe. Back down to second here. Drivers will be fighting the rear, especially towards the end of the race through this uphill hairpin. Then there's a short straight back down the hill, braking hard into turn 2. Another second gear hairpin, easy to snag a brake if you're not careful there, and it leads almost straight into turn 9, a long, slow, blind left-hander as we rejoin the Cup circuit. Turn 10's almost flat out in these cars, bit of a lift on fresh tyres, but when the tyres get worn through the end of the 80-minute race, you can expect them to maybe even start lifting off fully or even snagging the brakes. And yeah, then we've got turn 11, the final corner. Wall on the outside is extremely close to the edge of the circuit, so running wide there could well be the end of the driver's race. Pit lane is on the right-hand side coming out of the final corner, so watch the drivers taking a slightly wider entry if they're going to head down into the pits. That's the lap of Watkins Glen then. 10 corners in total, 4 to the left and 7 to the right, along with the bus stop chicane, which for some reason isn't counted as a corner in terms of numbering here at Watkins Glen. Circuit length 3.4 miles or 5.43 kilometers, depending on your units of choice. The layout has remained mostly unchanged since 1971, where the boot section was added with the bus stop chicane, the inner loop added in 1992. We visited the circuit twice before in the Wave Italy Apex Racing League GT Championship, and Aaron Powell's the only driver on tonight's grid who we've seen win here in the past. And Andy, 5 cars the drivers can choose from for the season, and yeah, BMW, Porsche, Ford, Ferrari, and the Corvette as well. Yeah, we've got 5 cars, and it seems like the Porsche is the 911 RSR is the favourite amongst the drivers for the season.
Yeah, it seems the way, Dan. Obviously, the last season, I think everybody favoured the Porsche, but there is a bit more of a mix this season. So we currently have 23 drivers driving the Porsche 911 GTE. We've got 14 drivers driving the BMW M8 GTE. We've got 8 Corvettes, C8R GTEs, 7 Ferrari 488 GTEs, and good old to see 4 Ford GTEs on the track. So nice to see representation. I think I had something to do with that, Dane, for trying to drive the car last season and bringing the Ford back into the race. So it's actually nice to see it. There's differences between the cars looking at it. The Porsche is very good on the tight sections of the circuits. The BMW has a really good straight line speed, so you should expect them to see the BMWs catching up on the cars coming into there. But then the Porsche and the Corvettes will be coming into their own around the tight twisty circuit. So there'll be a bit of to and fro in between the cars whenever we see the long straight or the tight corners. So it's going to play a major part in how the guys are going to try to get their overtakes doing.
Yeah, absolutely. The cars all have very different characteristics. The Porsche, commonly known as one of the more difficult cars to drive out of the GTE cars, pretty loose in the rear end, under braking especially. as we have now got live pictures from the racetrack. You can see the drivers making their way through. It's towards the end of qualifying, 2.5 minutes left, and the track is only getting hotter. We've just passed midday in Watkins Glen, and yeah, you can see the track map on the left-hand side. You can see the temperature, 126 degrees Fahrenheit, which equates to 52 degrees Celsius. And yeah, we've just passed midday, so you can definitely expect that to get hotter throughout the race, which is what the drivers definitely would not want, Andrew.
No, 52 degrees, the tyres are going to be screaming to be changed halfway through this race, so that is going to be a real factor in this race, being such high temperature. And as you mentioned, Dane, the tyre temperatures are only going to increase with the increased temperature during midday, so it's not at the hottest part of the day on this track. So expect during the race to actually get hotter on track, which means that the tyres are going to wear a lot more. So, you know, I think that is going to be a major part, and it's going to be that split decision whether to change them tyres or whether to keep them tyres.
Yeah, I think depending on the different strategies that the drivers might take, because they do have to take a pit stop for fuel. There's no need to change tyres, but with the track temp as hot as it is, that might just be an option for some of the drivers. It's 30 seconds, I believe, is the delta if you want to take tyres, or the added time if you want to take tyres compared to just taking fuel. But fuel lasts around about an hour in these cars. It allows for very many different strategy options. You can take 40 minutes worth of fuel and pit straight in the middle of the race, or you could pit early and run the full tank all the way to the end, or you could run the tank dry from the start and then pit closer to the end of the race. So there's lots of different strategies that could come into play here. The pit window is going to be more or less between 20 and 60 minutes, and yeah, that leaves a lot of options for the drivers in terms of strategy, but it will make the race a little bit more interesting as well, because you can use the time that you take to pit to get into some clear air and hopefully have your other drivers that you're racing against get into a little bit of traffic as well.
Yeah, it's a massive window between the pit windows where you can come in and effectively do your one stop in the race. So it'd be quite interesting to see the different strategies of the guys, if the teams are working together and got the same strategies, or they have to go on the fly if something happens within the race, because obviously they've got their fast repair as well. If any incidents do take place within the first couple of laps, you know, that could change completely their outlook of the race going forward. But at least with fast repair, they don't end up being a lap down. They can still stay within the race.
Absolutely, and with the drivers finishing in qualifying, it's time to take a look at today's grid as we head into the first round of this new season, round 1 of 12, race 1 of 23, and it's Nicholas Laubisch for Urano Esports taking pole position here for the very first time. The German are lining up alongside Tobias Ogrodink in second place on the grid. He's racing for German Sim Racing.de. Danny Lee in third, regular in the Apex Racing League GT Championship, and the Brit will line up alongside Leandro Andarutti, regular in Apex Racing League competition, but I don't believe I've seen him in the GT Championship before. So you start in fourth, then we've got James Crouch in fifth, Aaron Powell, as I said earlier, the only driver currently on the grid to have won an Apex Racing League GT Championship race here at Watkins Glen. Did that in race 1 in season 2, so yeah, very long time ago, but he is the only person on the grid to have done that. He'll start in 6th. Then we've got Logitech Gialtus esports driver Michael Neumeier in 7th, then Jensen Andressens in 8th, Matt Chambers in 9th, Nikolai Thrain rounding out the top 10 in the grid. All pro drivers, so the drivers are split up into 2 categories, pro and am, based on iRacing and or previous performances that the admins of the league are aware of, and all the top 10 are in that pro category, as is the driver in 11th, Avanzini, the Italian, starting in 11th, alongside the first of the AM drivers, Drew Becker, in 12th for Indy Autosport Black. And we've got the next 12 drivers up on the screen now. Vin Glenn starts 13th alongside Mikkel Reuterbusch, with Max Bandian in 15th, Mark Hutchinson in 16th, David Gowrie in 17th, another one of the AM drivers, so he'll be starting 2nd in the AM category. Vincenzo Taormina excuse me, in 18th. Then Emil Wimbo for Kairos competition, the Swede starting in 19th. Butler Power Motorsport, Stefan Schlacker in 20th. Luke Rogers also Butler Power Motorsport, so the teammates lining up more or less alongside each other. 21st, he'll start. Kevin Kittelman, another regular for the Apex Racing League GT Championship, starts in 22nd. And then we've got a couple more AM drivers. Amir Thacker, the Singaporean driver for Butler Power Motorsport, a couple of that team's drivers in this championship, lines up alongside the Welshman of Chris Prescott on row 12. Got a lot of drivers. You can see them sneaking their way through the S's now. You can see where it bottlenecks with those barriers. That's the scene of many a lap 1 pile-up. Hopefully we don't see that here today. Dean Powell will start in 25th. Then Stephen Brumfield, Chris Van Den Ness, Derek Atkinson's the brother, I believe, of Jensen, who's starting up further in the field. Daniel Sigisavo in 29th. Tom Brown in 30th. Tom Collins in 31st. And Tom Bingham in 32nd. So the 3 Toms all starting next to each other, which is a little bit weird. John Tressida in 33rd. Christian Engelhardt in 34th. And we've got Alex Chaber and David Bush in 35th and 36th. Kim Holberg in 37th, and we've got most of the AM drivers in this area. Vanim Pedrov in 38th, Elliot Barenberg in 39th, Nicholas Matthews in 40th, Regis Clark in 41st. A lot of American drivers in this area of the field. James Coulabailey in 42nd, the 5th of 5 American drivers from 38th down to 42nd. Miguel Ben Beltran in 43rd, then Dennis Meisner, Angel Pedrero, excuse me, in 45th. Dominic Linden in 46th, Jack Tingy in 47th, Colin McKenzie rounds out 48th, and then 49th on the grid for Odyssey Racing, Christian Malkarek. And that is a huge grid there. And as we make our way up between toe and heel on the sole of the boot of this Watkins Glen circuit, what are you expecting heading into this the starting sequence? Do you think we're going to make it out clean? Is I think the biggest question.
Yeah, very impressed with your going through the grid there, mate. Many cars there, so you can take a breath now. But no, so the first lap is going to be crucial. You know, the guys need to be aware that it's an 80-minute race. You know, we always sort of see incidences in normal iRacing round turn 1 and going up the S's. So as long as they keep it clean going through that area, then hopefully there. But what they got to be aware of is the inner boot and the outer boot. You know, the tyres are going to be cold. They can't take it at the full speed. So we might see a few spins going in around the first lap if somebody's trying to push it.
Well, round the final corner on the pace lap they go. Here we go then for round number 1 of the Apex Racing League GT Championship by way of Italy. And we go green for the first time. Nicholas Laubish in the Porsche 911 GTE makes his way down into turn 1 in first position. Then Tobias Ognerick in second. Then we've got Danny Lee centered up the inside for third position. They all seem to have made it through cleanly for now. A couple drivers blinking, at least on my screen, but we haven't had any spinners or crashes yet in the opening lap, which is good to see. This is where we might see it though, heading down through the S's, up through the S's, I should say. Looks like we have made it through cleanly into the bus stop for the very first time. Tobias Ognerick into the bus stop chicane, takes the lead on lap number 1, and huge number of cars, some of them having to take to the escape road. But oh, there we go, a couple of drivers off the circuit there, and oh, it looks like there's a bit of a mess in the background, but for the most part, a lot of drivers making it through without incident, which is what we like to see. But it is the German Tobias Ognerick who leads into the boot for the very first time in this race, in this season. And there's still some drivers running side by side as we come towards the end of lap number 1. It's a pretty clean start, surprisingly clean start with that many cars in the grid.
Yeah, I was quite surprised on that. You know, you saw 3 or 4 wide coming up the S's, you know, but they all kept it nice and clean, gave each other enough space, and yeah, on the majority survived it. Obviously the inner loop had a few casualties, and that's going to be the biggest one. You know, the inner loop is where you can gain a lot of time, but that's probably the most consistent corner that you're actually going to get your slow down penalty. So if you go touch the grass on the right hand side out of the exit on the loop, that's where you're going to get the slowdown penalties. But we saw a good start from Loud Beach, but unfortunately that slipstream coming down the back for Ognerich, which obviously took over the lead from Loud Beach. So the slipstream is going to come into effect, and it's going to be quite prominent within these first couple of laps, because the cars are following in a big train going side by side and behind each other for at least 2 or 3 laps. So we should see some good overtaking and some good slipstreaming down the long corners, especially with the BMWs, with the power that they've got on the straights. We should see them crawling up the field going into the long straight stage.
Absolutely, we might see that here. We've got Chris van den Esse heading down towards the bus stop chicane in the BMW. And it looks like Carl managed to get ahead of Kittelman just in front, but he wasn't able to sort of move the Porsche down the inside of Adrian Sims as well. The AM car starting to get a little feisty with the pros just ahead of them, as Kittelman has just gone around the outside of Gary. Actually, no, up the inside of Gary it seems. And some of the drivers heading side by side through turn 6. They did say watch out for that in the track guide. It is a place where if the driver in front just gets turn 5 ever so slightly wrong, you can take the risk and send up the inside. A couple of drivers doing that. Malbish now dropping down to 3rd from the lead of the race, and lead for PanamaGrips.co.uk has moved up into 2nd, but they're mostly clean still throughout these opening laps, which is good. Hopefully that's a sign of things to come for the championship, as side by side just behind Van den Esse is Thacker and Tresteder, I believe, who were going side by side through turn 9, but they are all single file as far as the eye can see as we go back from Chris and
Yeah, so you saw there, obviously, the Porsche's closing up in the Sector 3. So Sector 3 is probably going to be more for the Corvettes, for the Porsches. The BMW is going to slightly struggle for that, because it's very much for the top end. It would have been interesting to see going down the start-finish straight to see how much of a speed advantage that M8 has over the Porsches. So this is where I'd expect him to start stretching out, but then obviously the Porsche coming into Sector 2 and 3 would then start closing that gap up. So, but Lauwich is seems to be struggling a little bit at the moment, Dane. He's obviously gone from 1st down to 3rd at the moment. He's 0.8 of a second behind 2nd place, and Andretti is hot on his heels, and it could be a next target for him.
Yeah, definitely. He's been dropping back from the leaders of Ogodnik and Lee. And yeah, you see he's got a half a second between himself and Lee, which is still well within the drafting range. So he's not going to drop right back unless he has a bit of a pace disadvantage. But Andretti also only half a second back, so he does have to watch out for the drivers behind. He's got the 2 Evo SR drivers of Crouch and Powell behind as well. So yeah, don't count those guys out either. Mostly half a second gaps between the drivers in the field, and then it goes down to 3/10 between everyone. So some nice trains forming, which should lead to some good overtaking opportunities down to the bus stop chicane, because yeah, that long run from turn 1 flat out through the S's, using the draft all the way. And if you want to get overtaking moves done into that area, now at the start of the race is probably the best time to do it, because the tyres are only going to get worse from here.
Yeah, so the tyres will be getting up to temperature now, so this is the ideal time to start putting in them fast laps. Obviously this corner here is vital, you get a really good exit. So what you'll see is the driver sliding out to the left hand side, hitting that white barrier. So there seems to be something with that white barrier that actually stops you going into the wall if you hit it right, but it's vital you get that corner right for your stretch down here, going into 3rd, down into 2nd gear. But you can go out quite wide on this left hand side, not get a penalty for it. The only time you would get a penalty is if you went over the grass on the edge. But we're coming up to the S's, so we should see a little bit of slipstream in here. But the problem here is with the cars that are going on is that because they're in such a long train, everybody's getting slipstream, so it sort of nullifies the slipstream effect. But this corner here is a prime opportunity to sort of sneak up the inside or sneak out, but it's also one that holds a lot of risk. So there's a lot of reward with risk into that corner, into the outer beat. You want to keep it nice and tight on the left hand side, slip out to the left hand side, and then get on to up into 5th gear, down into 3rd gear onto this corner. Come in. Oh, we got an off. Who is that? That is Silvo. Silbo, he's obviously took that corner. That corner is treacherous. If you take that corner too wide and you push it too much, you'll see exactly what Silbo did there. He pushed out wide and unfortunately he couldn't meet that apex, and that apex on that corner is vital to get a good run out onto going up to the toe corner. And what he did is he pushed out wide, hit the wall. Luckily he didn't spin, so he may have minor damage, but he certainly have damage, and that will affect his aero going into the race. So you might see him drop down a little bit more, Dave.
I believe the drivers do have one iRacing fast repair available to them. I could be wrong on that, but heading into the oh yeah, we can just see, yeah, he's hit the wall fairly hard, but it was pretty flush. He was quite side on there, so you shouldn't have too much damage from that, which is good. As a couple drivers running a little bit wide, heading up through turn 1, maximizing speed through there. You don't get an off-track or 1x penalty for that, so the drivers are going to be using that throughout the race. It can become a little bit more difficult later on when the tyres get warm, but Schlacker now up the inside into the bus stop chicane, into the inner loop, and he makes that move up into 16th very nicely indeed.
Yeah, that was a great move, and that was a classic move going on the inner circle, trying to get that inside line, because the outside driver has to slow down to make the corner coming out the inner loop. Otherwise, he will run wide and risk that slow down penalty. So, you know, big train of cars now from 16th all the way to about 20th place. So a lot of action on track. They're still quite close together. We haven't spread out quite far now, so there's still a lot of slipstreaming going on, a lot of train effects, but what it will do is make for some really interesting racing. As we see Max Banden here in 13th place trying to go around the outside of Glen. They'll get him on the inside on line into turn 10, I believe it is. Yes. Coming up onto the fast left-hander, so he's obviously trying to defend his line there, because going on that inside line would have compromised his speed, but he's in the BM, and obviously he should start to pull away slightly down onto, like I said, onto the start-finish straight. Even though the Ferrari behind has got this new toe, the power of that BM will not come into effect for that Ferrari, unfortunately, I don't believe. Going into turn 1. This corner is really vital that you get that inside curve and don't push out too wide in turn 1, because if you do, you scrub a lot of speed, and that's where you'll get caught coming up here, because it's vital you're going at full speed, coming up the S's down onto this back straight, because it starts from after turn 1 and ends at the inner boot, this long straight, even though there's some corners in there, they're all flat out.
Yeah, it's just a sitting duck if you get a bad line through turn 1, probably one of the most crucial corners on the circuit, if not the most crucial corner on the circuit. As we watch Leandro Andretti currently sitting in 3rd, and we're just cutting back now to James Crouch. Crouch has actually been dropping back. He was up with Matty Chambers in around about 6th place area, and he's just been consistently dropping back in the Corvette. I think something might have happened to him on this last lap, because he has dropped quite a few places, and maybe just got a bad exit out of turn 1 and got draft trained down the back straight. We'll have to see now what happened to him. He's tried to go for a move up the inside here into the inner loop, does so very nicely. Always got the curb, and yep, he's gone over the grass on the inside. That is a lovely slowdown. He's going to pull to the right hand side and serve, I believe, and yeah, he dropped back a couple places, so it's not a pace disadvantage he has, it's just a slightly wrong line through the inner loop. The drivers take that so on edge that any small mistake is probably going to get you a slowdown when you head over that grass.
Yeah, that was a classic show of how easy it is to push it on that inner loop to get that slowdown. He wasn't that far onto the grass, but literally if you touch that grass, you're going to get a slowdown, and that will affect you, as we saw there. See him piling down the order into about 7th place at the moment. So the biggest loser at the moment seems to be Nicholas Laubeach, though. He's now currently in 5th place. He's dropping down the orders. He's about 2 seconds behind 4th place, and seems to be losing track. His setup might not be as he liked for the track. This track is very much dependent on a really stable car, certainly with some of these really fast corners. And if the car feels a bit twitchy on the rear end, then you're going to be losing time after time each lap. And it seems to be the way that's going. He's normally very fast and normally well out front, so this is uncharted territory for Lao Beach at the moment.
Yeah, it definitely is, and we've just been watching him for the last few moments. Powell, remember, he's the only person who's won a race in this championship at Watkins Glen that's currently on the grid, all over the back of the Ferrari in front of the Andrew Andretti. He's been going, looking down the inside almost every single corner for the first and middle sectors. As we head into the final few corners now, can't help but think he'll be trying to line up his run through turn 1 perfectly and try and make his way through. As we get a replay of Emil Winbo. He's going around the outside. Oh, he's been put into the wall. Not too much space given around the outside there. And oh, does he have damage? He does. He's going to pull over to the inside of the circuit and probably retire from the race, try and get a fast repair. But it looks like his competitive race is pretty much over. So yeah, very unfortunate stuff for him. It's just hitting the Armco barriers, and oh, we're going to have a move for third being made here because Andrew's just gone over the grass and run all sorts of wide through turn number 1. And we'll see now Powell right up against the gearbox of the Ferrari in front of him. Andretti pulls to the middle of the circuit. He's given Powell the outside line. He doesn't have the speed to pull ahead into the braking zone. They're going to go side by side into the chicane, and Powell just has to back out and settle for 4th for now. Oh, and Andretti's run a little bit over the grass. Doesn't look to have a slowdown, so he should be safe, but Powell still all over the back of him.
Yeah, it was that classic inside line going into that inner boot. If you're trying to defend that line, that's certainly the line you want to take, because the car is going to have to come around the outside, and unfortunately you need to be clipping that inside curb on the inner loop to get you a good exit out of the loop. So it compromises the line if there's 2 cars wide going into that corner, with the inside car getting the better run. But he seems to be holding off his position at the moment in third place. But you got Aaron Powell right on his tail, and is going to leap on any opportunity that he'll get into a little bit wide out into that corner. But I think he'll be okay. It's a nice tight left-hander there, which is quite slow, so he shouldn't lose too much time coming into there. The biggest tell is obviously how close they are together, and that slipstream down into the start-finish straight. So this last corner is really important that they get it really good. And this will be a quite good view to see how close they get to that white with the wall on the left-hand side. So you can see there, they literally touched that wall going on the inside line. It's quite impressive. It's a do-or-die moment, I think, going into that Dane. But Aaron's had a good run on him into turn 1. Unfortunately, not able to make the move here now. So, but quite wide by Andretti going into that corner. So it may be a replay of the previous lap.
Yeah, except we've got Laubish all over the back of Powell now as well. So 3-way battle now for 3rd position. Looks like he's just too far back to try and make anything happen here, but he could pick up the scraps as Powell once again to the outside, backs out. He's going to try and get a good run through the chicane. He actually has managed to get a pretty good run on the Ferrari in front, but yeah, you can try and stick it up the inside through turn 5 if you get your line through the chicane right, but unfortunately he just wasn't quite able to do that. And you can see once again putting its nose down the inside, just looking for any opportunity to try and get up into that first podium position available to the drivers. So yeah, looking on from Nicholas Labish, yeah, it doesn't look like any moves are going to be made at least for the rest of this lap, but going on to the next lap, it looks like it's going to be much the same, just Powell trying to get past. And if I was Labish, I'm just going to wait behind as I watch this battle in front of me play out. If you are watching us here on Apex Racing TV on YouTube, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss any of our broadcasts. You can also hit the like button, that really helps us out. And if you don't know already, we do have a Twitch channel. You can go and follow us on Apex Racing TV, and that has a bit of a lower latency, so if you are following along with the live timing, you can get at apexracingtv.com. You'll have a bit of a better experience over there because yeah, the live timing and what you're seeing on the screen will be just a little bit more synced up. So yeah, do subscribe here on YouTube and go follow us over on Twitch as well. Looking a bit further down in the field, you've got Matty Chambers making his way through turn 1, using all of the runoff on the exit. And he's got the driver just behind, also in the Corvette. You've got quite a few Corvettes actually in this midfield section. One of the 4 Fords in the background of the shot as well, making his way onto the back straight. That's its name, it's called the back straight. Are we going to see a move from the driver of the 150 machine towards the chicane? No, we're not, but we are going to see around the outside, almost side by side to the chicane for a second. Just about pulls out the driver of the 173 behind. There it is, the move I was talking about last lap. Just behind, he stuck it up the inside into turn 5. Has he been able to make it work? This crouch up the inside of Adriansson, and he has. He's made it work. What a move.
Yeah, Crouch got that inside line, and that's vital for that corner to get that inside line. So you had Adriansson going quite wide on that corner, and if you're quite wide, you've got to scrub a lot of speed off to get the exit out of that and going down into the chutes. So taking that inside line, and Crouch done it perfectly there. He took that inside line really tight on that, and he was able to power out to that corner, which kept all his speed and obviously got him past Edgerton going down into the chute. So perfect example of an overtake move and taking that inside line, and how fast that is compared to sort of the outside line on that day.
Absolutely, and just heading through the boot section, you might notice that there's some concrete strips sort of around the circuit. Those are concrete, and you can see it here through turn 10 as well. There's a little one here in turn 11. Those strips are concrete, and iRacing have modeled that. It has slightly less grip, not because of the surface being any worse, because the surface isn't the best in this version of Watkins Glen, but it heats up more than the tarmac around it, which is weird to think of, but it does. So you might see drivers near the end of the race as the track heats up trying to avoid them where possible through the boot. You can avoid them a little bit because, yeah, you'll have a lot less grip on those because they're so much hotter. As the door banging down the back straight, the 3 wide, heading in towards the chicane now, and Tobias Ogrening wants none of it. Backs right out. Andretti up into second, still hasn't let power pass. The fence has been so aggressive from the driver of this Ferrari here, looking back at the Corvette and another Ferrari behind. Ogrening did absolutely none of that. He backed out very early indeed, and yeah, he wanted no part of 3 wide to the chicane, which is very understandable.
Yeah, very astute move there, really. Going 3 wide in that corner really doesn't work going into the inner boot. So he obviously backed off to save himself for another day, but we know he's fast. He's obviously been in second place. He kept ahead of the guys, so therefore he's now got the draft that he was giving everybody else. So he can now feel what everyone else was giving to him, and he can start picking them off. So they're all really close together from like second all the way down to 6th place. So real close battling from 2nd to 6th. It's any call there. Any slight mistake, and we could see him changing like a pack of cards, I think, Dane.
Yeah, absolutely. A bit of a mistake from Andretti in turn 9, and had to go hard on the offensive. Down the inside into turn 1 goes Powell, and he's made the move up into turn 1. He's made that move stick. Or has he? Yes, he has. All the way around the outside, actually, on the exit somehow. I'm not too sure what happened there. I think it might have been a switchback attempt from Andretti. But now, was that a wise move? Because we know the draft is so powerful up through the S's and down the back straight. As we watched Neumann go from 6th to 5th. Past Laubisch, is dropping further back. In towards the chicane they go. And yeah, no moves being made other than the one that we have just right on board for. But yeah, these drivers starting to get a little bit more feisty with their overtaking moves. Powell sending it up into turn 1. Not really a usual overtaking spot because you have that run down into the chicane, but he's seen that it wasn't working and decided to try something different, and it worked for him. Just looking at Chris van der Nessen now. He's got a little bit of company with the Corvette, the 178 just behind him. And yeah, in the BMW should have the power advantage you'd expect. But yeah, that Corvette, a lot of drivers switching to the Corvette, interestingly. After the Wednesday's BOP adjustments by iRacing, quite a few of the drivers from all different cars in the field switching to the Corvette for the season. So it seems like that was one of the more popular cars after the new balance of performance adjustments, and it's not normally a very popular car. Drivers didn't like it when it first came out. When it first came out, it was slightly overpowered, but once it was made equal again, most of the drivers went back to the BMW or the Porsche.
Yeah, definitely. I think the issue was obviously it seemed to have got a reduction in weight, didn't it? Got a 15 kilo reduction, so everyone thought, well, that's going to be an overpowered car in this series, and obviously the BM got an increased weight reduction, but we can sort of see that they're evenly matched, and what iRacing try to do is to try to make these cars a little bit more evenly matched. But we were watching, obviously, Chris Van Den Essy there. He's steadily getting up the field. He's actually gone up 9 places since the start of the race, so you know, he's being consistent, and that's what this track is all about. Certainly on an 80-minute race, it's being consistent, putting them lap times in. As we can see there, the power of the BM going down the straight. You know, he had the slipstream effect plus the overpower. And we see how easily he got past there, and he's pulled a little bit of gap over Drew going down that back straight. So there we see the power of that M8 going down the straights. But I'll envisage that in sector 2 and 3, the Porsche will start clawing him back in, because it's not very good getting that tank around corners in sector 2 and 3 day.
Yeah, no, and I can imagine on more worn tyres that might be even worse. The BMW might have an even worse disadvantage there, as we ride on board with someone a bit further back in the field. Engelhardt, he is in 36, but he's got Coulibaly in 35th, just in front in the Corvette. Whilst the iRacing obviously trying to make the balance of performance such that the cars are equal as equal as possible over a season or over a lap or over a race, they do still have very different characteristics, and yeah, that's why we see them being better in some corners or some parts of the circuit. It doesn't have to be a corner, and other cars then having an advantage on other parts of the circuit, which is good to see, because that's how it works in the real world, and that's what we like to see. Engelhardt just closing in a little bit as they make their way through the second part of the boot up here towards what I call the ankle, even though it's not really called the ankle. That's not the name of the corner, it's just turn 9. We've got 2 Porsches running side by side a little bit further back in the field. And Prescott's made a move up the inside. They're almost making contact. Matthews in behind has gone on the grass, somehow manages to keep it going in a straight line. Could have easily ended up on the inside barriers.
Yeah, for sure, that's a treacherous corner to get that corner, because it's an off camber when you go up there. It's really deceiving. You don't really recognise it, but you know, great skill to keep the car in a straight line. I think he obviously luckily he had all 4 wheels on the grass. If he had some rubber on the tarmac, I think he might well have spun there. But what amazes me, Dane, is, you know, we're 25 minutes into this race. We've had 50 cars on this grid. We saw that first couple of corners coming up the S's and into the inner boot and outer boot, but yet we've got 2 retirees out the whole field. It just shows the respect that each of the drivers have for each other within this league.
Hey, absolutely. Drivers being really clean. Watkins Glen is a circuit, but because the barriers are so close and the track isn't the widest that we are going to visit throughout the season, it's not the narrowest either, not by some margin, but it's quite interesting to see how the drivers not making too many errors and hitting the walls. We've seen, I believe, only 2 drivers making their way down into the pit lane and retiring from the race. Emil Wimber is one of them, but not sure who the other one was. I believe that might have been one of the lap 1 incidents. Riding on board with Tom Collins then, looking ahead at Trevor, Thack and Gary in this battle for 21st. Tom Collins riding in 24th as we see drivers ahead going side by side almost through turn 1. Up the S's they go, and oh, look at the run he's got now. The BMW had to lift off a little bit, gets blocked, and he's going to lose a whole heap of time to Gary and Thacker ahead. Very unfortunate for Collins. There was just nowhere for him to go, and the driver in front of Trevor just making his car extremely wide.
Yeah, unfortunately Tom had to slow down there as well, you know, so it compromised his speed coming out of the corner. So, you know, but he's obviously passing going on the inner loop, and now he's got to make up that deficit from that unfortunate issue going up on the S's. So all to play for again. So Collins and Trevor fighting it out in 23rd and 24th place. great racing in this middle pack. I think, you know, with this league, you get great racing wherever you're at. If you're at the front, you get really close racing. You get the middle of the pack, you get some really close racing. And even at the tail end, there's still that competitive nature between the teammates and between the different teams to make sure that they do. And it's vitally important on this first round that we try and get the best result you can, because it sets you up for the rest of the season. So we can see a little bit gap from Lee Powell and Andretti now starting to spread out the field, but there's still the trains that we're looking at here from Newmeyer, Low Beach, Crouch and Chambers going around the first corner. So it's like a big long train, and then behind that we've got another 5 cars in the further train. So just going up the S's here, this corner is brilliant to drive. It's a flat out corner and opens it out for the back straight, so it's a really good corner to drive. And to get the passing moves done. But as we can see there, you know, we got Low Beach dropping back slightly going down the back straight. That's surprising with the slipstream that should be happening on that. I'm not sure what Newman is driving. Yeah, oh, he's in the BM, obviously neutralising that draft going down that straight. So yeah, real tight racing at the front end of the field, and some really tight racing down the middle end of the field. So, you know, really great racing that all you guys are being treated to. As we look on the inner loop, Dave Gary trying to overtake on the inside, hitting the inside corner a little bit too hard, compromising his move on the outside, so slowing him down slightly coming out, going around down the chute into turn 6.
Yeah, absolutely. And Wave Italy are sponsoring, the title sponsor of the Apex Racing League GT Championship for the first time. We've done some sponsoring for some of the other leagues, the Apex Racing League as well, but yeah, they are for the first time on the GT Championship. It's great to have them along, and Wave Italy's mission is to offer the best experience in driving simulation to an ever broader audience, with the aim of conveying the thrill of a real race to passionate and professionals of esport and sim racing. We offer extremely performing and realistic devices, also suitable for corporate or private events, an unforgettable immersive driving experience. And Wave Italy are providing the Pro winner the choice of their high-end Wave Impetus Imola or Wave Impetus Monza sim pedals in a colour of their choice, and AM champion will get a half day of professional coaching at the Wave Italy Professional Training Centre in Verona, which is absolutely fantastic for them to be doing that, as somebody has made a meal out of the exit of turn 9, found themselves stranded
That was Tom Collins
on the circuit.
Yep.
And now there is a car that's just slammed into the side of them with absolutely nowhere to go. They're pretty much blocking the entire circuit. So what on earth has happened there?
It's probably going around that corner and overpowering out and just turn around. It's easy to do on this corner, and now we're getting into the realms of the tyres starting to get a bit of wear. So I think, oh no, it's incident. It was an incident between the two cars. Who was that who went back to the pits? That would have been, was it Alex Traber? Might be Alex Traber. That obviously an incident coming out of that corner that we had there, Dane. So we should see a replay of that incident at the moment.
Yeah, let's have a look and see, because yeah, down the inside we've got David Gary. He's just looked at down the inside of two Porsches. I think the Porsche didn't see him there, and that's caused a huge gaggle of cars to make their way into the wall, and then somewhere else there's the Porsche maybe going to rejoin the circuit in a bad position. But yeah, nothing really that Gary could do. He gave space on the outside, and the Porsche driver just cut across just ever so slightly, and yeah, that contact sent them into the wall and caused all 4 of those drivers to have a bit of a meeting with some Armco barrier, the blue Armco barrier they have here at Watkins Glen. Very distinctive barriers that they have here. That might just be one of the weird things I've picked up over the last couple of years. All the different circuits have their different unique features, and the blue walls is I think the blue barriers, sorry, is pretty much unique to Watkins Glen. I don't think I've seen that anywhere else. Maybe Homestead Miami Speedway, the road course, I think has some blue barriers too. But yeah, nevertheless, Mark Hutchinson leading his own little train here. He's got the Ferrari just behind of Bandian, and then slightly further back is Taormina for Mag Performance Sim Racing Team Junior. But Hutchinson for Evo SR, they always have a huge bunch of drivers that take part in the Apex Racing leagues, or most of the Apex Racing leagues. I believe 6 currently active leagues for the drivers to take their pick of, and Evo SR constant. Constantly in all of the leagues, actually, in Apex Racing. So great to have them along for another season of the GT Championship. Just looking back at Bandy, he's not gaining too much through the boot section, but he's not dropping back either. And it looks like he might just about be close enough to get close with the draft into the chicane. Probably not able to make some sort of move happen, but yeah, it could be interesting. You've got the Porsche just behind as well of Talmina. Don't count him out, as somebody has just swung all the way to the inside of the circuit, possibly making a move, but just pops back into line. Oh, that's a bit wide there, I think. Some of the drivers taking advantage of track limits there a little bit too much, and maybe scrubbing off a bit of speed. They're trying to get back onto the circuit before the grass, because if you hit that grass, not only is it a 1x, the bump that you hit by going onto that grass might just send you into one of the walls.
Yeah, definitely. There is obviously the track limits in turn 1. There isn't really any limits. They can go as far out as they want, as long as they don't hit the grass coming off the exit. But clearly, you don't want to be pushing too far out wide. Oh, as we see a mistake there from Hutchinson, went a little bit wide now, so he's going to compromise the speed down into this corner. So we should have Brandian getting right on the back of him and coming out of this corner, going into the toe. Oh, a bit of a grass for Talmina. Coming into the toe of Watkins Glen. A bit wide from Hutchinson's at the moment. I wonder if he's having a bit of an issue with his tyre wear at the moment, because that will start becoming a factor now. 32 minutes into this race, we should start seeing a bit of tyre wear and a little bit more mistakes maybe occurring from the drivers. But what you were mentioning earlier, Dane, about Wave Italy, I happened to have a look at their website earlier on. Very, very easy to navigate, very good. And one of the things I really did like to see is they've got this rig, sim rig, that looks really futuristic on the website. I recommend everyone just go and have a look at it. It is quite impressive. It would look very impressive in a sim rig for sure.
Yeah, they do have quite a bit of high-end equipment. I think that might have been the sim they use in their professional training center, which I've seen a couple videos of on YouTube and other platforms. They, yeah, it does look pretty good indeed. We have got a move being made. Powell making a move on Petrov, and yeah, he's made that move stick there. That is not the same Powell that is up in second, but it is the Powell that is recovering. He's in the pro class, and it looks like, yeah, he's trying to come back up to where he was early on in the race. Rogers is into the pits. That could spark quite a few pit stops. Petrov is making his way into the pit lane as well, but we are definitely well within the fuel window for drivers to start making their pit stops. Danny Lee all the way out in front. He's got about half a second gap to the Evo SR car of Powell just behind, and he's catching up to a little bit of traffic as he makes his way through turn 9 now. A couple of the drivers ahead need to be lapped, but I wonder if we're going to see any of the drivers up in front as we near the halfway point of the race make their way down into the pit lane. That's going to be really interesting when we see the first of the drivers near the front of the field do that, because it could spark a whole lot of pit stops, and yeah, hopefully we get some good action on the pit lane as the lap cars in front of Lee, or the drivers about to be lapped in front of Lee, making some moves.
Yeah, a little bit of compromise there from, I think, Lee when he was coming out of turn 1. That guy is obviously a little bit slow, Matthews, compromising the front runners. But obviously, the slower drivers need to keep on their lines, and the faster drivers need to get around the outside of them. So obviously, that's what we'll be getting. He'll be getting the blue flag. Just stay on his line, keep his line, and obviously move over as and when he can. But sort of that corner, unfortunately, where Lee caught him was turn 1, which is you've got nowhere really to go on that corner. You've just got to follow the line, and hope for the best. So, but Lee seemed to have pulled out a bit, so he gained a little bit of advantage there over Powell. Powell was right on his tail. He's now a little bit back from him on there, about 1.7 seconds now. So he actually gained about a second from the driver in front. So from Lee. So yeah. The back markers are now starting to play their part in the race, certainly for the front runners. But I think these front runners will go as far as they can into this race, Dean, because you don't want to blink first in this race. And well, I think you're right. As soon as the first person blinks, everybody else will follow them in either on that lap or the following lap, just to make sure that they don't get out, or they all get out at the same time, to still keep it competitive and keep their challenger in sight, I think.
And one thing that Aaron Powell might just be doing, as he starts to catch back up with the draft, he'll catch up a lot more out of turn 1 and up through the S's into the bus stop chicane, of course, the inner loop. But he might be just sitting behind Lee. He doesn't need to make any kind of move straight away, but he could be lifting off a bit earlier into some of the corners, not pushing as hard as Lee will be out in front, of course wanting to keep the lead, saving a little bit of fuel. And what that means is we could see some fuel strategy being played out here. And it's time to take a little bit of a break. We'll be right back after this message from one of the sponsors of the series, Apex Racing Academy. Apex Race Academy for helping sponsor the series as well. We are still looking up in the front of the field, this time looking at Nicholas Laubish in the Urano eSports Porsche 911 RSR, looking ahead at the BMW of Logitech G Altus eSports. And we're just looking at these three drivers. Powell has got ahead by around about 3 seconds now, so he has pulled away from Andretti over the last few laps or so. And Nicholas Laubish into the pits.
Yeah, starting off in the pits now. I think it's getting into that window. And this is a decision to do. Are they going to take them tyres, or are they not going to take them tyres? I think the guys coming in now will feel that the tyres are probably not that bad. And they probably may make the mistake to say, well, I'm not going to change the tyres because I'll save myself 20 or 30 seconds, however long it will take to change the tyres. But it may come into a factor later on in the race, because there's still 50 minutes of this, 40 minutes of this race still to go in this. So they've got a long way to go into this race at the moment. So yeah, obviously when we went to that advert, we saw a car spinning. So luckily it was a back marker, and he actually stayed out of the way of the front runners. Or that could have been interesting then.
Yeah, no, definitely. As we've got the BMW of Chris Van Den Esse up the inside into the chicane. They make a little bit of contact. Somehow managed to keep it going in a straight line, but Chris, for that audacious move up the inside, instead of gaining a position like he was after, he's lost 3. So yeah, not the best move for him, and he's lost a bit of time as well. So we'll have to spend a bit of time to catch that back up. But now it will be interesting to see of the top drivers, are any of them going to follow Laubish back onto Laubish into the pit lane, because yeah, they might want to react against maybe an undercut or an overcut from other drivers. They don't want to be pitting miles away from everyone else, because it's much easier to know where you are and to gauge your pace when you've got the drivers around you, on your relative, in your mirrors right in front of you, than it is when they're 20-30 seconds behind and you don't really know where they are. So yeah, I would, at least in my opinion, prefer to stay near to the drivers that I'm battling, but the drivers might be able to make some very interesting pit strategies work. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Only just gone halfway race distance in this opening round of Season 5 of the Wave Italy Apex Racing League GT Championship. And we're riding on board with Matty Chambers, looking back at the driver in 8th, one of the Fords in the field, Nikolai Thrain. The Dane in 8th and heading through the chicane now. Bit of a gap behind as well to those drivers, but not looking close enough to try and make any sort of move in the near future unless Chambers makes a mistake, which halfway through the race when the tyres start to get a little bit more worn and the track increasing in temperature still, it's very possible that drivers will start to make mistakes, especially 40 minutes into the race, because yeah, they're getting a bit fatigued at this point. But it's good practice for the drivers with these long races that they can practice for the 6 hours of the Glen that's coming up soon on iRacing. Actually a lot closer now as the driver behind Chambers, and we're seeing him on the face cam, well, half face cam, because he is wearing the VR headset. And yeah, it's really cool to see some of the drivers providing shots like that we can show webcam footage. And yeah, it's cool to see how all the different drivers have very different setups. We've got a couple of them in VR, a couple of them on single screens, ultra wides, triple monitors, all sorts of different wheels and wheel bases. It's really cool to see.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a bit on the fence. I haven't tried the VRs, but I can imagine you get a lot better field of view. You can look around, see the cars down your left and right hand side. But no, I've never actually tried the VR setup. He looks very cool there, Matt, in his chair with his VR headsets and his shorts and t-shirt. Obviously, if he was driving a real car, he wouldn't be dressed like that. But that's one of the benefits of driving iRacing than driving a real car, I think. But no, he's doing really well, Matt. He's in 7th place at the moment. Oh, Nicholas Laubeach, obviously. He caused a big collision out of there. Didn't quite catch what happened there. Obviously, he was probably catching a back marker or going over. So we'll try and see if we can get a replay for you on that. He probably did an audacious move around the outside of one of the back markers just to make sure he doesn't lose space. So I think that's something else to take into consideration, Dane, is looking at your relative, because if you're in the front and you can see you've got a whole load of back markers in front of you, that may influence you to pit early. But what Lee and Powell and the rest of them might be looking at is their relatives, to see they're relatively spaced out. So what that will give them, well, that will give them the slipstream that they've never had before, and then give them that extra speed going on to the long straights and do it. But obviously if they're all concertinaed up in front of him, bit of a tongue twister there, then basically look at it. So now we can see the replay. Unfortunately, it's not showing on my screen. Have you got it, Dane?
Yeah, and we're just going to see what happened here. It's Stacker, who's just, I think, got a little bit loose, got a tap from behind as well. And he's been sent on his way, rejoined into the middle of the circuit. Not the best place to be, almost taking out a couple other drivers as well. And heading straight down to the pit lane right in front of the BMW. Are they going to make contact, or they just about managed to avoid it there? But yeah, a bit of a mistake there from Thacker, and helped on his way. At least that's what I saw. But yeah, unfortunate for him. Pretty hard contact into the wall, and yeah, that's he's got a faster pay. Luckily for him, it was right there on pit entry, because he could have had a bit of a longer journey to try and travel with a damaged car. So it was a bit lucky for him, but he has now used his one fast repair that drivers get, and yeah, that means that he doesn't have that still to use. If any of the other drivers get damaged, they can go and take their fast repair. He doesn't have that luxury anymore. John Tressida then in 21st. He's got the driver in 20th of Schlacker just in front of him for Butler and Powell Motorsports. And yeah, he's not quite close enough to make a move into turn 1, but as I said earlier, it's not really the overtaking spot that you want to do. You want to try and get the run up the S's into the chicane, which has worked pretty well, but interestingly, some of the drivers struggling to make it work. We saw Powell really struggling to get past Andy Rutti in the opening stages of this race, but for other drivers it's been a breeze getting past the drivers in front, and I think we might see something pretty similar to that here. Look at the run that Tressida's got down the back straight. If he was a bit closer, that could have been a fairly simple move into the chicane, and actually what he's done is pressured Schlacker in front quite a lot, and looks like Schlacker maybe ran a bit too deep into the chicane, a bit wide out of turn 5 as well. So he's starting to close down that gap. What that means is he'll be a lot closer next time by to try and make a move into the chicane, because we saw how much of a run he managed to get on Schlacker in front.
Yeah, I'm just looking down the timing charts for the lap times of the guys. They're losing around, I reckon, around about half a second on the start of the race at the moment on the currently used tyres. So it is slightly affecting them, but it doesn't seem to be affecting them too much at the moment. But we have Andretti here with Crouch behind him, so Crouch should get a nice run up here. So he's going to try and take his inside line. Andretti should have probably covered off that inside line together, but I think Andretti is actually going to get that move done. Yep, he does. Crouch gets in front, so a great move coming up the back straight into the inner loop, going onto the outer loop, Dean.
Yeah, just it's a very interesting part of the circuit because you've got that turn 5, the outer loop, which is a really fast corner into, and it's a relatively fast corner compared to the rest of the corners that you face up until turn 10, because these are all very slow second gear. Very difficult to put the power down, especially through that uphill head, because the car doesn't have as much grip as it usually would over the concrete strips as well through this section. You can see there on the left hand side, just trying to keep off of it was Andretti, which is good for him. It will give him a little bit of a grip advantage. You can see the drivers really not wanting to get all over it too much, just crossing over it when they need to. But yeah, it's a really different corner to most of the corners of the circuit. You've got this opening 5 corners, not including the chicane, where they're all nice wider like entry corners, wider radius corners, where you can carry the speed through them. And then the second sector and the second half of the circuit, that's really slow and stop-start. Some of the drivers seem to be preferring the boot section, which is unfortunate for them because there's not too many places you can try and overtake in the boot section, whereas in this first half of the circuit you've got many places to overtake, as we're about to see. It looks like Crouch making a move on, actually no, that's a lap car, ignore me, I'm not talking sense at the moment, but Andretti is pretty close to Crouch nevertheless. The Ferrari up against the Corvette, which we will get to see at this year's Le Mans, I believe, which we didn't get to see last year, unfortunately.
Yeah, that corner coming up into the inner loop is really an interesting one because, it seems to be a quite tight corner, but if you watch some of the guys and how late they break into that corner, so you're going down from 6th gear, topping out, coming down into 4th gear and taking that corner in 4th. So it's a bit of a deceiving corner because it looks like it'd be a lot slower than that, but in reality it's a really quick corner, and if you get it just right, you get slingshot out there. But what you've got to be aware of is coming out of that corner, going around into the outer loop is to not overshoot the outer loop. So you've got to rein back your power coming out of the corner to get you set up for the apex for the outer boot. But exactly like you said, Dane, this track is, you can split it in half. You've got the front half, which is really fast, really open corners that allows drivers to use the lower downforce to get the maximum speed, but then you've got to offset that with the second half of the track that has the tight twisty corners. So you either go with a shorter downforce for the speed at the front half of the course to compromise your back half, or you go for tighter line speed at the second half of the course to compromise you on the front half of the course. So it's that dilemma that the guys have had to do, and like you said, the easiest places to pass is down this part of the section, as we're seeing here. We're seeing the slipstream, and if the guy in front has got a setup that's a lot stronger downforce, that slipstream will be a lot more in effect, whereas if it's got a lower downforce, then you won't see that passing moment. As we saw there, it wasn't closing up as much as maybe some of the overtaking moves we've done on that. So obviously there's big moments coming. Where's that coming out? The S's. Yeah, coming out of the S's for Vincent Tamara. Obviously must have clipped that corner coming up onto the inside and basically got out wide and got on the grass. But here we got Chris Van Den Essy working his way up. He's had an outstanding race as Chris Van Den Essy, up 13 places from where he started. Seems to be just taking it nice and steady, picking off players, and now he's in the top half of the grid fighting with Max Brandon for 13th. So really good race so far from Chris Van Den Essy of Performance Link Esports.
Yeah, in the BMW, doing a very nice job indeed, and yeah, like you said, up 13 places from where he started 50 minutes ago. Now almost an hour into the race, as Looks like he might have been trying to make a move, but I don't think it was close enough to do anything with that. In the Autosport, black driver Tom Brown, another one of the Fords in the series, and taking a little bit of a wider line through turn 8 there. But they're just looking through some of the drivers. Their lines through the second sector, or the second half of the circuit, through the boot section, the slower section of corners. Very different lines being taken by some of the drivers. It's really interesting to see, really, because you can take quite a few lines through the corners, but there's no real way to overtake through there unless the driver in front makes a mistake as Tom Brown goes into the pits. But you'd think, we can see him on the webcam as well, but you would think that the drivers would try and prioritize the run on the back straight where you'll make most of your overtaking happen, because yeah, it's all well and good trying to increase your speed through that second half of the circuit, but you're gonna find it extremely difficult to defend, and more importantly, gain positions, make overtakes. It's a real dilemma for the drivers and the teams in terms of setup creation, and that's a dilemma for Danny Lee, because as you can see, he's got the EvoSR driver of Powell right behind him. I said Powell was one to watch out for with his race winning experience here, but yeah, he's really proving it right now, and Danny Lee knows all about it. He's watching him closely in his mirrors, I would imagine, as we're near the end of the pit window, don't forget. So these drivers are going to have to come down to the pits within the next couple of laps, because they're not going to be able to run too much longer on fuel, and we do see it all too often where drivers make that mistake of running just that extra lap, either losing time in the pit stops because they've had the fuel save too much, or even worse, running out of fuel, which depending on where you do it on a circuit could be disastrous for your race if you have to then take a tow. But Lee has a 2.5-tenth gap between himself and Powell. As you can see, it's a couple of car lengths at max as they make their way up through the S's. Is Powell going to be able to get enough speed on Danny Lee to try and make a move? Both of them in the Corvette. He's pulled up alongside. Is he going to be able to make it work? Is he going to be able to do what he couldn't do against Andretti? All there side by side? No, he can't. He has to back out. And Danny Lee, for now, keeps that race lead. But look at that. He sent it up the inside into turn 5, the outer loop. Is he going to be able to hold it? They're still side by side now. Finally, just tips ahead. But Lee is still there on the inside. Into the boot we go now. Turn 6. Just touching the grass on the inside. And it looks like Lee might just have it. No, Powell carrying a bit of speed on the exit. Now through toe. This is going to be difficult for Lee to hold it around the outside. They're making a little bit of contact. I think Powell's got it now.
Yeah, definitely great move there. Wheel-to-wheel action going on to that inner loop. Obviously, Powell was protecting that, defending that inside line. But as we saw there, I think what he tried to do is the same speed that he normally went through if he took the outside line, and it compromised the speed on the coming out. So he got pushed out wide coming around the outer loop, which obviously gave Powell the emphasis to go on the inside and give him this, and it was obviously corner to corner action, and it still is between these two drivers. So really close, but you know, Powell's done really well. He was around about 2 seconds behind Lee, so he's obviously clawed that back. So he's certainly on a man on the mission at the moment, and we'll see if he can extend it out. It's gone out to nearly 0.3 of a second, but it'd be all to tell down this back straight, and I think it'd be a role reversal to the previous lap day.
Yeah, definitely will be interesting to see. I don't think he's got the gap, Danny Lee, to try and make the move into the chicane. We'll have to see, of course. Powell found it very difficult to get past Andretti with that move, but he was able to get past Lee, so you'd think that Lee was running slightly more downforce, slightly more drag on his car compared to the driver who's currently in 5th. Only 5 minutes left of the first hour of this race, which means we have 25 minutes left to go. So yeah, those drivers up at the front definitely going to start making pit stops very, very soon. We do, of course, have to watch out for Laubish, who is ahead of that man, Watkins Glen, who I believe has just got up ahead of Adriansons. There he is in the Verano eSports Porsche, and that gap is 39 seconds, which, if I'm not mistaken, is probably going to be a little bit too far to catch up when the drivers up at the front of the field do make their way down into the pit lane. His pit stop was 22 seconds. He pitted on lap 22. His pit time was 9.8 seconds. I think that's just a bug on my system actually. There's no way that his pit time was only 9 seconds, but it does look like I don't think 40 seconds is the delta. I think it's a little bit less than that. So yeah, I don't think he'll be coming back out into the lead, but I don't think he'll be coming back out too far behind either. So he's definitely still one to watch out for. Of course, one of the earliest pitters in the race so far.
I think the pit lane here at Watkins is quite narrow, or quite short, so it's in your pit box and then out. So it's only the case of it's only the case of how long and how much fuel they're adding in. So we don't lose a lot of time like some of the other circuits with a really long pit lane.
It's one of the shorter pit lanes on the series, as we've got a little bit of action further back in the lower half of the top 40 drivers. Still very much most of the drivers still running in this race. Only a few drivers have retired from the race so far. But as we make our way towards the hour mark, it's a good time to thank once again the title sponsor of the series, Wave Italy. And Wave Italy's mission is to provide the best experience in driving simulation to an ever broader audience, with the aim of conveying the thrill of a real race to passionate and professionals of esport and sim racing. We offer extremely performing and realistic devices, also suitable for corporate or private events, an unforgettable immersive driving experience. Wave Italy are providing the winner of the Pro GT Championship, choice of the high-end Wave Impetus Imola or Wave Impetus Monster Sim pedals in a colour of their choice, and the AM Champion gets a half day of professional coaching at the Wave Italy Professional Training Centre in Verona. So thank you very much for Wave Italy, to Wave Italy for sponsoring this series. Also, once again, do make sure you hit that subscribe button and the like button as well if you enjoyed the broadcast, to make sure you never miss another one. Also hit the notification bell so you get notified whenever we go live, which in recent times has been once or twice, sometimes even 3 times a day, especially on the weekends. We do tend to be pretty busy in recent times, so yeah, make sure you hit the notification bell. You'll never miss one of our broadcasts. Also check us out on Twitch, give us a follow there if you are following along with the live timing available at apexracingtv.com. You'll have a bit of a better time over on Twitch. It's a lower latency broadcast, so what you see on screen and what you see on your live timing will be a little bit more synced up. So yeah, subscribe on our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitch as well. Still no pit stops for the leaders then, as we make our way into the 59th minute of the race, and I think that means that they're just going to run their tank as dry as possible. Quite interestingly, the current leader of the race, Aaron Powell, he's been sat behind Danny Lee for a while, probably fuel saving, so you'd think he might even have a bigger advantage when those pit stops do come around.
Yeah, you would think that it's getting to that window now, getting to the hour mark. The fuel tanks will be running very low, and it depends how much fuel saving they've done in the last hour to how far they can eke out this stint. Because obviously, the shorter the stint, the less of the fuel you're going to put in, which means less time in the pit. So, you know, certainly if you're not going to take tyres, it's all about when do I want to pit, how much fuel am I going to put in to get me to the end of the race, and the further you can go into that, the less time you're stopped in the pit box putting. As we see there, we've got going into the pits Andretti.
We've got Matt Chambers as well, basically on the hour mark, and Tobias Ogrodnik for German Sim Racing .de. So yeah, we have got some drivers starting to make their way into the pit lane. Aaron Powell as well, who of course is what was the race leader. So we'll have to wait and see. You'd think that means that Daniel Lee is going to be coming back, and the rest of the drivers up in front of him will be heading down into the pit lane pretty shortly. But pitting on lap 34 is Aaron Powell, so yeah, pretty late into the race. 20 minutes left then. We'll have to wait and see where he comes out, but it's looking good for him with just a quarter of the race still left to go. Interestingly, Chris Van Den Nesse is very much the highest AM. He is quite a lot further up the field than Dennis Meisner, who is in 19th. Meisner's just stuck down into the pit lane now, and Chris Van Den Nesse has not pitted yet, so he has got that advantage that you can see on the screen. Darren Adrianson has pitted. So yeah, it looks like some moves being made, and yeah, the pit cycle really starting to come into effect.
I believe Lee's gone into the pit lane, so yeah, into the pit lane. So he's about 31 seconds, I think, if you worked out the gap between Powell and Lee. So it's around about 31 seconds for the pit stop. So see how well his in-lap was to see if he can come out in front or behind Powell and how close he can come to him. But Powell's got a few back markers in front of him, which may play a part in the outcome of where he comes out, if it's first or second. He's going to obviously hit them back markers going up the S's, but some of the back markers actually file into the pit lane. Chris Van Den Nesse, one of them, and Tamura the other. So obviously got away with that, and should be quite clean going up into the S's. So where's Lee? Oh, quite close. So I think it's status quo. I think you would say that was the.
Yeah, and it looks like Lee hasn't quite got the speed out of the pit exit that Powell had, but he has got a less gap, a smaller gap between them than he did when Powell went into the pit lane. He's not going to make a move into the chicane. It wasn't anywhere near close enough. But I was wrong. I thought Powell would have been saving fuel, would have had a bit of an advantage coming out of the pits, but no, apparently not. He wasn't. He was pushing very hard indeed to try and stay with Daniel Lee. So yeah, we've got a battle for the lead that is definitely going to last for the next 20 minutes or so, you'd imagine, unless they take each other out. Hopefully we don't see that happen. But
very experienced racer.
Some of the drivers actually quite close together. We've seen this field sort of spread out a bit, but once the drivers in front of Lee and Powell, Adriansons and now Neumeyer's into the pits as well. A couple of other drivers still need to make their pit stops too, in and around that top 10 area. We'll see the gaps sort of update and be a little bit more realistic to what we'll see near the end of the race. But yeah, we do have quite a few battles out on circuit still, so plenty of racing still to come as we enter the last 15 minutes or so in this race, and things are really heating up near the end of this first round of the Wave Italy Apex Racing League GT Championship. 22 races still to come after this one, 11 rounds at 11 fantastic circuits that we're going to be visiting. As you can see, Adrianson starting to drop down through the field as well, but Powell and Lee really close between those two, and you can see out in front, Michael Neumeyer, I believe, has he pitted? He has. He's pitted and come out in front.
Okay, that was.
Where on earth did he come from? He was 3 seconds behind when Powell went into the pits and when Lee went into the pits, and he's managed to gain 5-6 seconds on those drivers in the pit site. Where on earth does he come from?
He's obviously looking at his fuel and being very conservative on his fuel estimations, but we'll see if he can make it to the end of the race. But you know, that came out of nowhere. I think, from that far back to actually be in the lead. I had to look at the timing tower twice there and say, where did Neumeyer come from? You know, I think the back markers did. Obviously, he's going to play a part in that, slowing down Powell and Lee, who are obviously fighting very hard together. But yeah, that's what came out of the blue, I think, on that one. But looking at the front two, Lau Beach and Austin. Well, who was it? It was in second, but they've come right down the field, so they're sort of struggling on. And then after a brilliant qualifying, they're really struggling during the race. We've got Lau Beach in fifth, and I need to find where second place was. I can't pronounce his name actually.
Tobias Ogrodnik has dropped all the way down to 41st. He's had to take a second pit stop, whether that was due to damage or a smash and dash. His pit time was 20 seconds or so, maybe even more, so he could have actually got a penalty for his way onto the pit lane or out of the pit lane a little bit too quickly, or there's a bunch of different penalties you can get from making your way into the pits incorrectly. Is what on earth is happening here? We've got 7 cars separated by basically nothing. I believe some of these may be lapped cars, or cars lapping each other, but no, it doesn't look like it actually. It looks like all 5 of these cars up here are racing for position, which is great to see in this battle for 27th. Loads and loads of drivers, 26th even. Loads and loads of drivers.
It certainly is.
In this area of the circuit, on a bit of a group, potentially holding each other up. We actually have a couple, one Watkins Glen in 11th is stuck in the middle of this pack of AM drivers near the back of the field. I believe Hutchinson might be here as well. Actually, no, he's not, just in the background there. The forward up the inside of McKenzie, up the inside of Petrov. And no, not able to make that work. Holding a bit too tight to the inside there. Avoiding contact, but yeah, not getting the run out of the corner that McKenzie would have needed to make that move up into the top 30.
Yeah, you see looking going down to the shoot round turn 6, the amount of marbles that are now being produced on the outside line. So that outside line now is going to be more slippy. So if you start coming down into that shoot corner and run out wide, as we saw with Powell when he was fighting with Lee, you know, it worked for Powell. He got the run on Lee coming out of that corner, but it could be starting to get a bit treacherous around there, certainly with all them marbles, you know, and drivers need to be aware. They've been running on these tyres now for around about 107 minutes, so it's gonna be start affecting the tyres, and you can sort of see that in the timings. They're starting to be around about 0.6, 0.7 of a second really, down from where they started the race.
Yep, and you can see now riding on board with Powell, looking back at Lee. We thought this was going to be the battle for the lead in this race, but no, they still have a second to try and gain on the BMW in front of them, the Logitech G Autos eSports driver. We should have paid a bit more attention to him really, because one of the top teams in esports. They've got drivers in Pesk and the iRacing Rallycross World Championship as well, so a very accomplished team is Altus Esports. Also got some professional teams on the GT Sport side of the sim racing as well. So yeah, not only an iRacing team, but yeah, they do a lot of different racing titles. And yeah, we probably should have paid a little bit more attention. Fantastic livery on that car as well, I must say. I do love the Altus Esports cars. They do look very good indeed. Yeah, but Powell and Lee still close as ever. I believe we may have a look at a replay of some of the drivers making errors heading into the pit lane. Apparently quite a few of the drivers had mistakes heading into the pit lane. So we'll see now James Crouch. He is making his way down the pit lane into his pit stall. Is he going to potentially miss the braking point for his pit stall and run a bit too far? Yes, he is. He's had to reverse slightly because his pit crew is a little bit too far. Oh dear! And Anderitti's done even worse and ended up in someone else's pit box and has had to he's had to reverse almost an entire pit box worth of distance there. So you're actually quite lucky, because if you overshoot it too much and have to reverse too far, you can get a black flag, which is something that a friend of mine found out the hard way in Daytona 24 Hours. Missed his pit box and tried to reverse about 3 pit boxes back and got disqualified halfway through the Daytona 24 Hours, which his team was not particularly pleased with. I can assure you that. But yeah, some pit box errors happening there. As we are now looking at Dennis Meiser, we can see him inside of his rig. He's got 3 monitors there. He's got a fantastic field of view over there with those huge curved monitors that he's got. Yeah, absolutely nothing that he can't see out of those.
No, very much cocooned in that rig. You can't complain for not being able to see anything. But also talking about Dennis Meiser, I mean, 22 places he has gone up in this race, so a phenomenal effort. He's the biggest gain across all the field. You've got Christian Maltrek has got up 22 places, so some really big movers in the fields. But yeah, he's done really well over the back end of the field. Quali had the bad qualifying, obviously, but he's worked his way up and up 22 positions. That's quite phenomenal, Dean.
Well, I think we can make that 21 now. He's just lost out to Gary into turn number 1. He's trying to get it back down the back straight, but not gaining anything really in the draft. He's actually almost losing time in the draft, which is something that you don't see too often. And he's under a bit of pressure now from the Butler Power Motorsport driver just behind him. Actually, no, never mind. That's a lap car or a car coming to lap him. That's not the car. The next car for him on his race is 13 seconds down the road. We have got a battle here in the middle of the top 10. And it looks like this is Nikolai Thrain in the Ford looking back at the Corvette of Adrianson's. Now looking ahead at Adrianson's and into the chicane. Oh, he stuck it up the inside actually, late on the brakes. Just about backs out in time because there's basically nothing separating those two drivers as they head through the chicane. But only 8 minutes left of the race, and well, look at that, maybe held up by some traffic. Maybe the two drivers behind him slightly quicker in these later stages of the race, because Powell and Lee only 0.3 of a second separate the top 3 drivers in this race. They have got some lap traffic up ahead, which could play into things. Just right in front of the race leader there, potentially just going to hold it all the way around the outside, yes, and letting all the drivers through, which is what we like to see, and definitely what Neumeier would be likely to, would not be likely to see, because he would prefer the lap traffic to maybe hold the other drivers up a little bit, all the selfish things that you think of when you're putting yourself in the cockpit of the drivers out on track. Ooh! Danny Lee, how has he managed to catch that? He was all sorts of sideways through there, almost 180 degrees of opposite lock through the final corner there. Pretty fast corner is turn 11. Oh, and even more, those tyres are shot. There's absolutely no tread left on those, surely, and they're probably overheating too. And look how much time he's lost in those two corners, 0.8 of a second, the gap between himself and Power now, but the gap between Power and Neumeier only 0.1 of a second, and even less than that now, as Powell has pulled up alongside. Down the back straight, they touched, I think, heading down the back straight. Neumeier, maybe having a bit more downforce on the car, has had to back out, and Powell takes the lead once again into the chicane.
Yeah, great move there. Got his really good slipstream coming out. But you saw there, obviously, with Lee coming out them corners, how hard he's fighting that wheel to try and keep the car on track and in the line. I think a lot of the drivers will be feeling that. So pretty much they'll all be in the same sort of boat now. You know, the tyres are starting to wear, but you know, really interesting end to this race. We've got what, 6 minutes left, 7 minutes left on here. 3 cars within a second of each other. Really interesting end to this race. So we've still got the fight here between Gary and Tressler coming up onto the last corner for the back straight. So we'll see if Gary can get him down into the first corner. So it'd be interesting to find out if any of the drivers actually did take any time. Probably not.
This is the battle for second and third in the AM class, and Gary moving up the inside, third and fourth actually, moving up the inside into turn 1, making the move very nicely on Tressler, and he's got Meisen just behind Tressler as well. The AM class starting to make their moves as we head into the final 6 minutes of the race, and we have got a battle for the lead going on. Powell and Neumeier very close together, side by side in fact, but Neumeier had to back out of that one. They got extremely close just now, but Powell still holding on to the race. I think that was into turn 1. Neumeier hasn't got a particularly small gap between himself and Powell. Lee's caught up a little bit as well, but yeah, Neumeier, he's not closed up as much as you would expect through that back straight, so maybe he's one of the drivers who's taken a lot of downforce in the car. I was being told by Emil Vinbo, one of the drivers who was retired from the race fairly early on, and he was telling me that the drivers, the wing settings that are available to the drivers range from 0 or from 1 to 12, where 12 is maximum wing. As there's a lap car not getting out of the way just in time. Powell's under a lot of pressure from Neumeier now, but the drivers have been taking anywhere from 7 to 12 on the wing. So yeah, lots of different downforce options that the drivers are using. 7 being the drivers saying, I want as much straight line speed as possible, and 12 being the drivers who are saying, actually, I want more speed in the corners. What that lap car has allowed is Lee to try and make a move up the inside of turn 9.
not quite able to make it work because Michael Neumeier was 100% aware of it and managed to put the block in well early enough. Powell's going to try and use this as an opportunity to escape slightly, but it's definitely not over yet. 4 minutes to go. Probably any of these three drivers could still take the win.
Yeah, around about another 3 laps to go. Here we've got a BMW in a Corvette sandwich here, and we'll see what happens. But I think obviously tyres are coming into play. So the last lap, it must be Neumeier had a bad exit coming out of turn 1, which wasn't able to get him up to the S's to Powell coming in. But obviously Lee's now coming into the fray, and Neumeier's got to be aware of that, and that could play into Powell's hands, because what he could do is obviously over defend from Lee, which enables Powell to get out of the slipstream, which would enable him to sort of push on. So I think Powell's hoping that Lee obviously battles Neumeier quite hard, and Neumeier defends hard to make sure that he can try and get away. But yeah, it's certainly a 3-car race at the moment, and it's coming down to the wire after nearly 76 minutes of racing. So absolutely fantastic racing from these 3 guys.
I was just watching Danny's onboard as we were watching go through turn 5. I think he was turning left on the steering wheel more than he was turning right. Throughout that long right-hander, his tyres are absolutely gone on that Corvette, but somehow still managing to keep up with the fastest drivers on the circuit at the moment. So looking back just a little bit, Dennis Meisner has got Trestager ahead. These two have been close together for a while now, as Gowrie has extended his advantage over them. This is for 4th and 5th in the AM category, I believe. And yeah, these two, Dennis not quite able to make a move just yet, but with 2.5 minutes left to go, probably 2 laps, maybe 3 laps for these guys, depending on where the leads are at this point. Yeah, this battle definitely not over yet. You can see he's quite close, heading up the S's now, and we can see once again on board with him inside of his own rig on the bottom right hand corner of the screen now. It's just really awesome to see. He's not going to make any sort of move, backing off a lot actually through the chicane, possibly underfueled the car slightly and is having to save a little bit of fuel. Yeah, definitely a possibility. You see that quite often in these longer races where fuel strategy comes into things. A couple of drivers going side by side ahead of him as well, as we watch on board from inside of the cockpit and inside of his sim rig as well. Timing tab back on the screen, 1.5 minutes left, and Lee is all over Neumeier as they make their way into the boot once again. Next time by will be the last lap of the race, the white flag lap, and see Lee getting all in the mirrors of the BMW driver. Look at the run that he's got. He's pushing Neumeier around the corner. Is he going to try and send it into turn 8? No. Neumeier defends. Will he try and hold it around the outside is now the question. Oh no, he goes for the send up the inside. Neumeier sees him just in time, and Lee isn't going to be able to make the move stick because he's stuck on the outside now of turn 9. Doesn't get the run on turn 8 that he needed. But what a bold move there from Lee. But what that's done is basically handed Powell the leaders. Massive block being sent there by Neumeier twice as they make their way through turn 10 now. Really hard on the defense. A flash of the headlights from Lee as well. And that's brought Laubish into things as well. White flag in the final lap of the first race of the season. Powell leads by 1.3 seconds, but the real battle now, I think, is between Lee and Laubish, because they're only separated by 0.3 of a second.
Yeah, Laubish is caught up on him. It's always the quiet ones within a race you need to be watching. Sort of like Neumeier and Laubish, so caught up with Powell and Lee. That was the dominant races in this race. But you know, now it's a 4-car race. But as you said, Powell's got out of it. He's got 1.3 second gap, due to the defensive effort from Neumeier to not let Lee pass going into sector 3 of the last lap. But Laubish is on his corner. He's starting to drop back slightly, so I think the main fight is going to be between Neumeier and Lee. So I don't think Lee is going to let Neumeier off the hook going into that. But looking at the AM Championship, you've got Chris van den Esse first place, and Imperial's race winning. I think he's about 10 seconds ahead of second place in the AMs, which is Darren Adridson, and obviously David Gowrie, John Truster and Dennis Meyer, who are the ones that we've been watching with the tight battling. But certainly the battle for the pro is coming down to the wire, that's for sure.
we're going to see any moves being made into the final few corners. Lee's under pressure from Laubish as Laubish tries to hold it all the way around the outside. This could be huge for him because if he can get a good exit, he can try and sneak up the inside into turn 9, and he does so successfully. He is ahead. Is he going to be able to make it step the lap car on the exit? Not doing any favors for Lee. And in the final few corners, Lee loses out on that podium spot. It looks like that Laubish will be able to hold on. But this man here, Aaron Powell, started 6th. I told you at the start of the race that he could be one to watch. He's the only driver to have won previously in the Apex Racing League GT Championship, and he crosses the line to do it for a second time here at Watkins Glen for round number 1. And Neumar just about holds off Laubish for that second spot. Lee, he went from 2nd a few laps ago all the way down to 4th now, losing out on that podium position as the rest of the drivers start to cross the line. But what a race from Powell.
Yeah, definitely. You know, he drove it to perfection. You know, he was off the pace. You know, he was about 2-3 seconds behind Lee for a long part of that race, clawed that back and then showed his speed and got past him. Very fortunate that obviously Neumar and Lee had that little battle, which gave him that little bit of gap, so it gave him a bit of breathing space. And then Laubeach, the last run coming down to corner 11, I think it was. No, sorry, the corner 8, and obviously sticking it up the inside for Lee, and he's got the inside corner for turn 9, which is a tight left-hander, so Lee had to obviously let him through there, and unfortunately there was a back marker that impeded Lee, and Laubeach got away to get the 3rd place, so it all happened there on the last lap.
Yeah, absolutely, and we're just waiting for the rest of the grid to come across the line, and top 20 have now finished. But yeah, lots of action out there on the circuit. A couple drivers finishing basically side by side on the circuit. Yeah, just waiting on the final 2 drivers to come across the line. Meisner and Tressida out there, and I do believe that is everyone to cross the line that finished the race at least. And yeah, we're going to go for a quick break before we get you the full official race results, to thank one of our sponsors, Apex Racing Academy. And welcome back to Watkins Glen International, where we have just seen the opening round of the Season 5 of the Wave Italy Apex Racing League GT Championship. Aaron Powell takes the win after a tremendous battle between himself and a couple of other drivers. He spent quite a while trying to get past Andretti, who ended up not finishing too high up the order at all in the opening stages of the race. And then the battle, of course, with Danny Lee to get back the lead after catching up throughout the middle section of the race. Then, of course, Michael Neumar coming out of nowhere to take the lead by 2 seconds after the pit stops. He had to catch up and overtake him as well, so a fantastic drive from him. Michael Neumar, of course, brilliant pit strategy from him. He managed to come out miles ahead of Aaron Powell and Danny Lee, probably to their surprise and to our surprise up in the commentary booth as well. Just unfortunately couldn't make his way up into that top podium spot, but fended off the rest of the drivers and finished in 2nd. Nicholas Laubish in 3rd, started from pole, dropped back all the way down to 8th at one point, I believe, and yeah, making its way back up into 3rd with that final lap overtake on Danny Lee. Brilliant stuff from him. Speaking of Danny Lee, he finishes in 4th, missing out on that podium spot on the last lap. Led most of the race, actually, and yeah, did a fantastic job to fend off Aaron Powell for a while, but yeah, Aaron eventually got the better of him and he ended up down in 4th. Matt Chambers in 5th. Fairly quiet race for him. He was on his own for most of it, but taking home a good chunk of points. Then James Crouch finishing just ahead of Mikhail Ritterbusch. Jensen Adriansens Thomas Avanzini and Nikolai Thrain. Himself and Mark Hutchinson, as well as Vin Glenn, had quite a few good battles throughout the race. Hutchinson in 11th and Glenn finishing in 12th. Stefan Schlecker, we've seen quite a lot of him. He finished just 2/10 behind Glenn at the line. We saw those two crossing the line right next to each other, side by side. Then Vincenzo and Taormina, we saw quite a lot of him as well in that battle between himself and a couple of the drivers further up the field. Unfortunately, he wasn't quite able to finish as high up as he once was, but yeah, did a pretty good job up there. Finishing in 14th. Then finally, we reached the first of the AM drivers, Chris Van Den Nesse, doing a fantastic job to finish 15th overall. He ended up with 13 places gained from where he started in this race, and takes home the AM class win as well. Dean Powell finishing in 16th. He was the last driver to finish on the lead lap. Derek Adrianson's Dean Powell finished within a minute of the leaders. I read the timing board slightly wrong there. Derek Adrianson second in the AM category. Then David Bush finishing 10 seconds behind him. Another 10 seconds behind him was Daniel Sivisava, who we saw going wide earlier on in the race, having a bit of a clash with the barriers on the outside of turn 6, losing him a couple of places and giving him a bit of damage to go with it as well. David Gowrie in 20th takes home 3rd place in the AM class. He only got that 3rd place in the AM class pretty late on in the race with 10 minutes to go when he got past Dennis Meisner. John Tressida finished in 22nd just behind Meisner. Meisner just about managed to make that move on him. Max Bandian in 23rd then, and he was the first driver to finish a lap down. We've got quite a few drivers finishing a lap down in this race actually, which is good to see because it means a lot of drivers finished the race, which is quite unusual for a fairly long race here at Watkins Glen. We've got Max Bandian, Christian Malcorrect, Tom Collins, Regis Clark, Colin McKenzie, Vadim Petrov, Chris Prescott, and Alex Traber, rounding out the top 30 drivers on the grid here today. 50 cars on the grid in total, and most of them finishing the race, which is what we love to see. Luke Rogers and Tom Brown, I believe, a couple of the last pro drivers to finish the race. Then Angel Pedrero, Tom Bingham, Elliot Barenberg, Drew Becker, Amir Thacker, who we saw with that incident with Laubish, as the differing pit strategies of the drivers put some mixed skill levels with each other. Thacker losing the rear end in that final corner, then getting sent into the wall by Laubish, who had pretty much nowhere to go. Unfortunately, Thacker took quite a lot of damage from that, and unfortunately he dropped a bit further down the order. Jack Tingy finished in 38th, then Dominic Linden and Christian Engelhardt rounding out the top 40. 3 laps down was James Coulibaly with Nicholas Matthews 6 laps down. And then the list of the drivers who didn't finish the race all finished extremely far behind the leader, the winner. Tobias Ogrodnik running right at the front for most of the race, taking a second pit stop. I'm not too sure why that was, whether it was damage, fuel, or a penalty. But yeah, he ended up not finishing the race anyway. Neither did Andretti, who was in a very big battle with the eventual race winner, Aaron Powell. So those two having a fantastic battle for second in the early stages of the race. Kevin Kittleman, 20 laps down for Indy Autosport Black, and his fellow Indy Autosport driver of Miguel Beltran not finishing the race either, retiring 32 laps before the end. Emil Wimbo, we saw that incident out of turn 6, getting forced wide and into the wall, giving his BMW a lot of damage to the right hand side and not letting him finish the race. Kim Holberg not finishing in 48th. And then finally, Stephen Brumfield rounding out the 49 car grid. I believe he had a bit of an incident heading into the chicane on the opening lap of the race, and he finishes last. So massive grid of cars, most of them finishing the race. Only 42 out of 49, so only 7 retirements in the race. And I think we're going to get a bit of a replay now of some of the events of the last few laps of the race, Andy. We've got a couple of things to go through, and I think first up we've got Danny Lee, who had a bit of a battle here in the final few corners.
Yeah, unfortunately, let's see if the replay works for me now. No, it's not working for me, Dane. Unfortunately, I can't see it, so I think you're going to have to explain what happens here. So the screen's going a bit mad.
Oh, well, yeah, Lee is massive block there out of turn 9. He's tried to go to the inside, as has happened quite a few times throughout the race with different drivers. Michael Neumeier very wise to it and just pulls straight across the left-hand side instantly, almost taking both of them and probably Laubish behind out. Luckily, Lee lifted off the throttle just in time, but a huge block on him after a very bold move, it must be said. Because he really did send it pretty hard into that into turn 8 for that move. And well, we get to speak to him now because we do have Daniel Lee in the commentary booth now for an interview. And Danny, probably not the result that you would have hoped for considering your pace, but a fantastic race that you had there, especially in the closing few laps.
Oh, that was so much fun. You couldn't have asked for a better opening round. There really is there's no telling which way it's going to go. I thought I had it pretty easy out in front. The switch to the Corvette just before round 1 was spurred by the fact that the BMW took a knock. So credit to Neumeier and Laubish for basically squeezing us out right at the end. But yeah, what a round! I'm absolutely just covered in just sweat. It was such hard work. Brilliant finish.
Yeah, absolutely. You did lead for most of the race up until just before the pit stops, where you had a bit of a battle with Powell, unable to keep him behind. I know that a lot of the drivers have been running very different downforce packages. Some of the drivers opting for less downforce and more straight line speed, and other drivers having a bit more downforce and speed throughout the corners, but leaving themselves a bit more vulnerable on the back straight. What side of that did you fall on?
I think it was the pretty skinny wing side of things. The overtake on Laubish at the start, for example, was a clean pass. There was no overlap. He didn't have a nose there, so that made that really easy. But I think Aaron Powell had maybe just a touch less wing because I wasn't actually able to pull alongside him in his toe. And that, I think, won the race for him. I was fully expecting his tyres to go off at the end, and to an extent they did. But Neumeier popping out the pits in first place at the end really just mixed it all up. I had no idea how it was going to go then, and time was quickly ticking away. Even with my pretty slippy setup, the two of them just had the legs. I could not get near them to make an overtake.
We did notice that. We happened to switch to your onboard through the final corner and then turn 1, and through there, those two right-handers, I think you turned left on the steering wheel more than you were turning right. Your tyres looked pretty worn by the end of the race. A very hot track temps here today. Did that make things a little bit more tricky than maybe you were expecting?
It really did. Throughout the first half of the race, I was pretty much babying the tyres as much as possible. There was room to go a couple of attempts faster, which in hindsight I probably should have took. But I was being really careful with the tyres, and I was only just hanging on near the end, as you saw. So I don't know how Aaron Powell made it to the end without facing backwards. Credit to them. They deserved to win because I thought I had it covered. I thought that Aaron Powell was going to slide up a track in the last 5 laps and then I could take it, but it wasn't to be. So it's just so much fun. I had no idea which way that was going to go.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, with a couple of fantastic circuits that we're going to be visiting in the near future in this series, I can't wait. It's going to be absolutely brilliant. And if anything, I hope that it's just as exciting as this race has been. Well, Daniel, thanks so much for joining us for a chat. We will see you for the next round in Imola. Before we let you go, is there anyone you'd like to give a thank to?
Thanks to everybody supporting on the stream. We had a few viewers tonight that were on board. It was a good thing to watch, I think. I think it was really fun. Thanks to you guys for organising the league. Thanks to Pineapple Grips, whose work I've seen, and they've agreed to let us represent them. Go and check them out. And thanks to the family for support.
Well, Daniel, thank you very much, and we will see you at Imola.
Thank you very much. See you next week.
Well, it was great to hear from him there. And Andy, we have got Nicholas Laubish up next for a chat. Take it away.
Hi, Nicholas. Welcome to the commentary box. Can you hear us?
Oh, yeah, I can.
Hi. So a bit of a mixed bag for yourself. So you're on the front row of the grid to begin with. So you seem to get a decent getaway, but then you got caught up in the field and you going down the positions. Was there a bit of an issue at the start of the race?
So for the qualifying for me, it was extremely good. I had another setup which wasn't tire saving at all with full camber and so on, and I had a pretty good lap there. But in the race, I knew that I am very slow on the straight, but I wasn't aware that I'm like 10 or 50 kph slower. So everybody could just overtake me, even though they're half a second behind me. That first of all wasn't very nice, and second of all, I had throttle problems. So after every corner, when I was going to accelerate again, the throttle jumped from 100% to about 80% all the time. So I lost even more time on the straight. And in the end, yeah, I think I managed the tires a bit better than anybody else. I still was extremely fine on tires. Maybe it's also because of the Porsche. And I was running a very with less camber than normally and higher ring, so I don't use that much tires. And you saw that in the end where I was 1 second faster than the guys in front. But I just had some too many mistakes, and the throttle problem also like costed me too much time to really get the position I wanted here.
I think towards obviously the end of the race, you came back into the picture. You sort of like came out of nowhere, really. We were obviously concentrating on Danny and Powell, and obviously they were fighting up the front. And then all of a sudden, you seem to jump into the picture and then you obviously stole third place on the last lap with some really good moves. And I think obviously you sort of answered the question. One of the questions was that your setup was more for a wing, so you were faster in the sector 2 and 3. And did you find that that's where you were gaining all your time on the people in front of you?
Yeah, I saw that on the straight I lost about 7/10 sometimes, but in the last sectors I almost gained 1 second at one point. So I knew that I was extremely good in the last sector, and I knew that Danny and everybody else had to brake earlier for every corner because their tires are worse, and because of camber things and wing things you always have to brake earlier. So I knew that when I'm on the outside I don't really have a problem there, because yeah, I can brake so much later, my tires are way better. And in the end I knew that Danny is a really good driver and you can really fight with him competitively and without any problem. So I knew that when I do something of a risky move, we still get along quite well and we won't crash out.
Yeah, no. How have you found this format? Because obviously normal format is a 20-minute with a 40-minute race. This one's been an 80-minute race. How have you found this one compared to the normal GT sessions that you normally have?
Yeah, I think that the other ones are more fun to drive because of the reverse grid. It's always fun to drive through the field and try everything there. Wait, now I hear something in the background.
No, it's great. Obviously, thanks for joining us in the commentary box. Is there anybody that you would like to give a shout out to before we let you go?
Yeah, of course. Thanks to Rano and all our sponsors, Heineken Media, HP and Tourway.
Okay, great. Well, thank you and congratulations on your third place and a good start for your title defence, I think, Nicholas. So that was Nicholas there, finished obviously in third place in the AM. Very interesting, I think. Dane, who should we go for next?
Well, we've got Mr. Matthew Chambers here to have a chat with us, and either us are driver choosing the Corvette for the season. A pretty popular choice before we get into the race. Before the season even started, a lot of drivers switching to the Corvette. What made you choose that car over the other 4 GT cars you could choose from?
Well, the last few seasons I've raced the Porsche and I sort of wanted something different. So we originally was going to go for the Ferrari until last week, and we did that little practice like media race, and it ended up with 0% after the 80-minute race, and we thought, whoa. And so it was purely based on drivability for the Corvette. It was just a more stable, better driving car on its tyres. So it's worked out all right.
Yeah, absolutely. Finishing in 5th place at the end of the day. We also saw you in your VR headset. Do you have some sort of cooling system or anything? Because I know it's a particularly warm evening here. I think it was the hottest day of the year so far here in the UK. Do you have some sort of cooling system? Because you must have got pretty hot under there.
Yeah, so I've got a fan over here. You can't quite see it out; it's out of shot, but all it's doing at the moment is just blowing hot air about now. It worked out all right for a bit, but I don't know how well you can see it on the camera, but I'm absolutely caked at the moment. I'm going to jump in a cold shower after this because that was disgusting.
Yeah, I can imagine. 5th place in the race then. You didn't have too many drivers around you for the most part, from what I recall at least. You didn't have to work too hard. Was that helpful at all, not to have to battle anyone too much, because you could obviously save your tyres a bit more and not have the sketchiness that we saw from some of the other drivers near the end?
Yeah, it was. I was sort of busy first half of the race. I can't remember who it was now. I apologise, whoever it was. But he was in a Ford and he was very quick through the corners. But we had a much quicker car on the straight. And once I worked that out, I was happy and content that I could just sort of drive my line. But I ended up obviously burning more fuel than say if I was stuck behind the car. So he did get out in front of me at the pit stop, but again, the straight line speed took me past him. So after that, I think I was 4 to 5 seconds clear of the cars behind and about 6 to 7 seconds behind James Crouch until he gifted me a place back on the last lap.
Yeah, so Watkins Glen, an interesting first round, the only 80-minute race. We're back to the regular 25 and 40-minute two-race format for the next round at Imola. What are your thoughts heading into the second round of the season?
It's promising, very promising. I'm happy with our choice. It seems to be quite a nice car to try and tweak to different tracks. So today's setup was made by Don, like Aaron Powell. He's a bit of a setup master and he's a bit of a god at this track as well. So we literally went by what he said to do with this car for this track, and it worked out obviously amazing for him. Like, well done on the win for Aaron Powell. And we'll just give the car to him each time, and he can do his magic and give it back to us basically.
Yeah, it's always helpful to have someone on the team that's able to do stuff like that. Well, yeah, Matt, thank you so much for having a chat with us. Congratulations on the brilliant result of 5th place in the opening round. Before we let you go, is there anyone else you'd like to give a thank to?
Yeah, so just the Evo team, you guys, particularly Don from the Evo side, because like I said, for the setup. Yeah, and just I think we got quite a few guys watching tonight, so cheers for everyone watching as well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you at Imola.
Cheers, see you later.
Well, it was great to hear from Mr. Matty Chambers. And Andy, up next we have got another one of the drivers out there on the circuit, of Stefan Schlacker.
Hi Stefan, can you hear us?
Very much so.
Obviously finished in 13th race in that race. Obviously up 7 places from where you started. How was that race for you?
The start was quite frantic. Could have been much nicer. Obviously starting in the middle of the pack with a terrible qualifying, but good race pace is always tricky. But working together with my teammate Luke, we cut quite nicely through the field. And yeah, first stint extremely well. I was also one of the fastest cars out there by our calculations. But yeah, the strategy didn't quite work out for us. Tried something a little bit different to the cars ahead and boxed us into a little bit of a weird corner. So yeah, strategy could have been better, but the race overall really good, I would say.
Yeah, so you obviously got 20th place in qualifying. How did you find qualifying? Was the tyres okay? Did the setup work for you?
Setup worked well for me. Just sadly had problems with the traffic, especially on the very first lap. People just out of the boot just completely stopped on track and I had to weave through, had to brake check as well and got rear-ended. And then the next lap out, people came together at the bus stop, and I had nowhere to go. So I had to reset again, and a good chunk of my qualifying was gone. So a little bit unlucky there, but it's a lot of cars on that tight track, small track, so I guess it's to be expected.
So we've obviously spoke to the other drivers, and setup was a big factor in that race. How did you have you set up? Was you set up more for speed, or was you more set up for the tight corners in the second half of the track?
Well, with the Porsche, how it works, it's very slow on the straights, so you're not gonna get much out of there on the terms of a setup. So we went just emphasizing the strength of the Porsche with going with the high-speed corners, the carousel, and also the toe. Really set the car up for those corners, but not over-tune it in a way that we are losing too much tire wear. I was quite lucky in the end. I still had some tire wear left, but sadly, my two teammates, Luke and Amir, they both ran into the issue of having 0% left on the left front tire, so they had to make pit stop, sadly, to change that tire. But yeah, I mean, it is Watkins Glen, it is the Porsche, and with the new tire updates that we got on the GTEs, it most definitely is still a little bit tricky to find everything out.
Yeah, obviously that was a factor that you don't normally have to take into account when doing these races. Obviously, this one being an 80-minute race, and you're normally used to the 20, 40-minute races. How do you find coming into this race compared to the normal 20, 40-minute races? How did you find it?
It most definitely is something interesting of a change. I myself am an endurance guy, so I most definitely like these rounds the best because that's where my strategy comes into play. But yeah, it's gonna be really interesting how the 20-40 minute races are gonna work because we have in the background a very great crew chief as well, Tom Wedgwood. So pretty sure that we're gonna find something very nice for those races as well.
Great. So we've got Imola coming up next. What are your thoughts on that track?
Should be very interesting. We think that the Porsche should be strong. Obviously, Ferrari should be the strongest at a track like Imola, but Porsche should be good there as well. And yeah, we honestly can't wait to start preparing for Imola.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us, Stefan. Before we let you go, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out to?
Yeah, obviously all of our real-life sponsors that we have, VCO, Peter Punk Performance, Miltech Sport, OMP, all of those great guys. I'm probably missing a few more of our sponsors, but yeah, thanks very much for supporting us. Thanks to our fans, and yeah, also much giving out to Tom Wedgwood for helping us out in the strategy terms.
No, thanks a lot. That was Stefan Schlacker, obviously finishing in 13th in the 80-minute race around Watkins Glen. So I think last but not least, Dane, we've got Dennis. So over to you, Dane.
Absolutely, we've got Dennis Meisner for Wraith Energy Racing in the Porsche, finishing 21st overall out there today. Dennis, welcome to the interview room, and talk us through. First of all, I'd like to ask all the drivers at the start of the season, your car choice, choosing the Porsche. Was there any particular reason for that?
I chose the Porsche by heart. I think it's overall a decent car, but I really enjoyed driving it.
And yeah, that's what a couple of the other drivers have been saying as well when they've picked the Porsche. Not necessarily the very fastest car, but like you said, they're all pretty equal anyway. Heading into Watkins Glen, an endurance round, 80-minute race as opposed to the 25 and 40-minute races that we are used to in the Apex Racing League GT Championship. Was that what was the differences in preparing for this event as opposed to the shorter races?
Yeah, normally I do a lot of endurance racing, so for me it was more going back to the usual. I had an idea that I would have an advance with the tires. I'm usually pretty easy on the tires, and I can hear the other guys struggled a lot. I could see that I gained a lot through the race. Also took a position last lap. His tires was just dead. He had a lot of speed over me at the first part of the race. But yeah, tires definitely a thing.
Yeah, tyre wear was really bad here, especially with the very high track temperatures out there, making it extremely slippy at the best of times. But yeah, it's just you had a pretty good race out there. Not the best qualifying effort, but 21, 23 places gained during the race. You had your fair share of overtakes.
Indeed. But yeah, I had no internet from. Yeah, we finished a 24-hour Le Mans race 8 hours ago, and like 10 minutes later, my internet died and went up 10 minutes before the race start. So I didn't have any time to warm up with the car. So I had to transfer from driving the 140 laps in the LMP2 car and going into the Porsche. So I struggled a lot in the quali and the first part of the race.
So realistically speaking, when you aren't in 24 hours of Le Mans for the 24 hours before the race, and have a bit more time to prepare for these events, where do you think you're going to be compared to the rest of the field when we head to Imola for the next round?
Imola, I think I'm gonna be further down the grid. I seem to struggle around that track, being consistent enough to really be in the fight.
Well, we have a long season left to go, so you're definitely not expecting you to be finishing in the 20 position mark for the rest of the season. But Dennis,
that would be amazing to do that.
But thank you so much for joining us for this interview for the first round of the season. Hopefully we'll be seeing you once again at Imola for the second round of the season in just a week's time. And before we let you go, is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Yeah, Radiant Energy for backing us up and letting us using their awesome logo to the team. And obviously the team behind me.
Well, Dennis, thank you very much, and we will see you at Imola.
Indeed.
Well, that just about wraps up the interviews for tonight's first round of the season. It was an absolutely action-packed race. We saw racing all through the different parts of the race, through the pit stop strategy, all sorts of brilliant stuff happening throughout the race. And Andy, before we sign off, do you have any final thoughts?
I thought it was a brilliant race. Really good format. 80 minutes. It pushed the barrier. The guys, as we saw there, a lot of the guys probably need a cold shower now. But you know, I'm being one of them, even though I'm only broadcasting. It was an exhilarating race to watch, and hopefully for our viewers, it was great view as well. And thank you very much for all you on YouTube and Twitch that subscribe to the channel. Please do subscribe and click that bell for more notifications. Really, yeah, just an amazing race, and I'm looking forward to watching the next one.
Absolutely, we had a lot of viewers today and a lot of new subscribers to the channel. Thank you very much to everyone that did subscribe to the channel. And if you haven't already, then go and do it. Hit the notification bell as well. We've got loads of broadcasts happening here on Apex Racing TV over the next few days, so make sure you hit that bell and you'll be notified, and you won't miss any of our broadcasts. Also hit the like button if you did enjoy the broadcast. Make sure to go and follow us on Twitch as well. If you do enjoy a lower latency broadcast, you might want to do that if you're using our live timing that you can find at apexracingtv.com, because everything will be a little bit more synced up. Also at apexracingtv.com you can find our broadcast schedule, and over the next couple of days we've got a lot of events happening. Currently ongoing is IGP Fun F3 World Cup, the Week 13 special event. So yeah, that's a regular series that we have. They have a Week 13 special event. They'll be going every Sunday during this broadcast. Monday, we've got ARL Mazda Cup Round 3 of their season at Summit Point. That's going to be at 7 p.m. UTC. And then at 12 a.m. UTC, Monday night, Tuesday morning, depending on where you are in the world, Rickmatech Sports Car Series is back for round 8 at Road Atlanta. Then on Tuesday evening, 7 p.m. UTC. Apex Racing League's GT Trophy, GT3 card, round 4 at Watkins Glen for them. So they're back here, but in the GT3s instead of the GTEs. eSports Racing League on Wednesday morning, 1 a.m. UTC. Could be Wednesday evening, depending on where you are in the world. Round 9 also at Watkins Glen. Lots of series running here at Watkins Glen for the next week. Then we've got also on Wednesday, 7 p.m. in the evening UTC, Apex Racing Academy Porsche Cup Championship round 6 at the Nordschleife. So that's going to be a very interesting race there. Waversley Apex Racing League Prototype Championship round 8 also at Watkins Glen is Friday evening, 7 p.m. UTC. Apex Racing Academy F3 VRS Super Series is back for round 9 at Phillip Island at 7 p.m. UTC on Saturday, and then we go back to the next Monday for Mazda Cup once again. Well, that was a lot of broadcasts, as you can see, for the next week here on Apex Racing TV. So if you're interested in watching any of those, you can hit the subscribe button or the follow button on Twitch, and you'll be notified for that. Once again, we would like to thank the title sponsor of the series, which is, of course, Wave Italy. Wave Italy's mission is to offer the best experience in driving simulation to an ever broader audience, with the aim of conveying the thrill of a real race to passionate and professionals of esport and sim racing. We offer extremely performing and realistic devices, also suitable for corporate or private events, an unforgettable immersive driving experience. Wave Italy are providing the champion in the pro class of the GTE, their choice of their high-end Wave Impetus Imola or Wave Impetus Monza sim pedals in a color of their choice. And they'll be providing the AM champion half a day of professional coaching at the Wave Italy Professional Training Center in Verona. So thank you very much to Wave Italy for sponsoring the series. Well, that is just about rounding up a very, very brilliant, in my opinion, first round of this Apex Racing League GT Championship. But 11 rounds still to go, 22 races still to go, so we're nowhere near knowing who is going to be the champion of this series, but we can have a pretty good idea of who's going to be up there battling for it after this race. Fantastic stuff that we have seen in this first round of the Wave Italy Apex Racing League GT Championship. Thank you, everybody, for watching us here today on Apex Racing TV, and we will see you very soon for round number 2 at Imola. Thank you for watching. Good night.
Is he going to be able to hold on? Race, has he actually got that cruise pace?